Ambassador Lee Min-ho walked slowly into the big round room where all the different space creatures met to talk about important things. He had been coming to these meetings for many years, and every time felt the same, like nobody really cared what humans had to say. The room was huge, with seats arranged in a circle. The most powerful alien species sat in the front, close to the center, where all the important decisions were made. The humans always got the seats way in the back corner, like children who were only allowed to watch while the adults talked. Min-ho straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform and tried to look confident, even though he knew today would be just like all the other days. Around him, dozens of different alien creatures were chatting with each other in their strange languages. Some looked like giant lizards, others like walking insects, and some were so weird that Min-ho still couldn't figure out what they were supposed to be. As soon as the human group sat down, many of the aliens stopped talking and looked at them, but it wasn't the good kind of attention. It was the kind of look you give to something small and unimportant, like a bug that crawled into your house. The Zephyrian delegate was sitting near the front. He was tall as a basketball player, but covered in shiny scales that changed colors, depending on his mood. Right now, his scales were a dull gray-green, which Min-ho had learned meant the alien was bored or annoyed. When Min-ho gave him a polite bow like he always did, the Zephyrian barely looked at him. Next to the Zephyrian sat a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis wearing clothes. This was the representative from the Catalan Syndicate. She made a clicking sound with her mouth parts that sounded almost like laughter, but not the nice kind. "Look, the quiet little humans are here again," she said to her neighbor, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear. "I wonder what complaints they will make today that we can just ignore, like always." Min-ho felt his face get hot with embarrassment, but he didn't say anything back. He had learned long ago that getting angry in these meetings only made things worse for his people. Instead, he took out his small recording device and turned it on. At least he could document what happened here, even if nobody would listen to the recordings. The meeting started the same way it always did. The powerful aliens talked about dividing up space territories, making new trade rules, and deciding which planets could be used for mining or farming. Whenever something involved human colonies, the discussion was always short. "The humans have some settlements in the Kepler system." One alien would say, "Do we need to worry about them?" Another would ask, double quotes, "No, they never fight back. We can do whatever we want." And that would be the end of it. While this was happening on the space station, back on Earth, Director Park Ji-woo was sitting in his office reading reports that made him feel sick to his stomach. Every week, the news got worse. Park was in charge of all the human colonies scattered across different star systems. His job was to keep them safe and make sure they had everything they needed to survive. But lately, that job was becoming impossible. The latest reports showed that alien species were making it harder and harder for humans to live peacefully in space. Trade restrictions meant that human colonies couldn't get important supplies they needed. The Zephyrians had forced 3 entire human settlements to pack up and leave their homes so the aliens could dig for valuable minerals in those areas. Even worse, the Catalan Syndicate had started demanding protection money from human ships. If the humans didn't pay, their cargo ships would mysteriously break down or disappear while traveling through space. Park's assistant, Kim Sora, knocked on his door and came in carrying a pile of digital files that probably contained even more bad news. "Sir," she said quietly, "the people running our colonies are asking when we're going to do something about all these problems. They want to know if Earth has a plan." Park rubbed his forehead where a headache was starting to form. This was the question he dreaded most, because he didn't have a good answer. "We do what we've always done," he said, though the words felt heavy in his mouth. "We stay calm. We don't fight. We find ways to work around the problems." Sora nodded, but Park could see in her eyes that she wasn't satisfied with this answer. Nobody was satisfied with it anymore, including Park himself. For 30 years, Earth had chosen to be peaceful. When other species were aggressive or unfair, humans would just accept it and try to find another way. They believed that eventually, the aliens would see that humans were good people who just wanted to live quietly and make friends. But as Park looked at the reports of human families being forced from their homes and human ships being attacked, he started to wonder if their peaceful approach was being seen as something much worse than just being nice. Maybe the galaxy thought humans were scared. Maybe they thought humans were too weak to fight back. The truth was much more complicated than that. But the aliens didn't know the truth. They had no idea what humans were really capable of when pushed too far. The warning alarm in Earth Command's main communication center started beeping at 3 in the morning. The night shift operator, Lee Sung-min, almost ignored it because false alarms happened all the time, but something about this signal felt different. It was weak and kept cutting in and out, like someone was trying very hard to send a message from very far away. When the big screen finally cleared up enough to show a picture, Lee's heart sank. The man on the screen looked terrible. His name was Choi Jae-min, and he was in charge of New Soul Colony on a planet called Kepler 442b. Lee had met him once during a training session on Earth back then. Choi had been a cheerful man with a big smile, who loved to tell jokes. Now his face was thin and dirty, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Earth Command, can you hear me?" Choi's voice sounded scratchy and desperate. "This is New Soul Colony. We need help right now. The Catalan aliens have surrounded our planet for 6 months. At first, they just stopped supply ships from reaching us, but now they're doing something much worse." The camera shook as Choi moved it to show what was happening outside. Where there used to be buildings, there were now piles of broken concrete and twisted metal. Smoke was rising from several places, and Lee could see people running around trying to help injured neighbors. "They bombed our school yesterday," Choi said, his voice starting to break like he was about to cry. "Most of the children were inside when it happened. We dug through the rubble all night, but we could only save a few of them." The camera showed a woman in a white doctor's coat walking through the destroyed area. Her name was Yoon Da-yoon, and she was the colony's main medical officer. Her coat, which should have been clean and white, was now gray with dust and had dark red stains on it. She was carrying a small child who wasn't moving. "Dr. Yoon has been working without rest for 3 days straight," Choi continued. "We've lost 12,000 people just this week. The Catalans aren't just trying to make us leave anymore. They're killing everyone they can find. They bomb our hospitals, our homes, even the underground shelters where we hide the children during attacks." Lee felt sick to his stomach. He had younger brothers and sisters, and he couldn't imagine anything happening to them like what was happening to these colony kids. "They sent us a message yesterday," Choi said. "They want us to give up all human rights to 3-star systems. If we don't agree, they'll keep bombing us until no one is left alive. But even if we wanted to give them what they want, we don't have the authority to make that decision. Only Earth Command can do that." The transmission started getting fuzzy again, but Lee could still hear Choi's voice. "Please, Earth Command. These are families here. Regular people who just wanted to build a new life on a new world. The children, ... Please don't let the children die for nothing." 20 minutes later, the emergency meeting room at Earth Command was full of important people who had been woken up in the middle of the night. Director Park Ji-woo sat at the head of the big table, still wearing the casual clothes he had been sleeping in. Around him, generals and advisors spoke in quiet, angry voices about what they had just seen. General Oh Hyun-woo stood near the back of the room with his arms crossed. He was an older man who had been in the military his whole life. For 30 years, he had been building something he called Earth's defense capabilities. But most people didn't know exactly what that meant. The official reports always described Earth's military as small and defensive only. "Sir," General Oh said to Director Park, "I need to tell you something important. We have been preparing for this day for a very long time. Our assets are ready and waiting. We can have our first ships at Kepler 4 for to be in 72 hours. Park looked confused. As far as he knew, Earth only had a few dozen small military ships, barely enough to protect Earth itself, let alone travel to other star systems to fight. What assets? Park asked. General O's expression was serious. The assets we've been building and hiding for 3 decades, sir. The ones that the galaxy doesn't know about. Park stared at the general, then looked back at the screen showing the destroyed colony. The camera was still working, and he could see rescue workers pulling more small bodies from the collapsed school building. Some of the children couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. For 30 years, Earth had chosen to be peaceful no matter what happened. Even when aliens stole from them, cheated them, or forced them to move, humans always tried to solve problems with words instead of fighting. Park had believed this was the right thing to do. He thought that eventually, the galaxy would learn to respect humans for being so reasonable and calm. But looking at those dead children on his screen, Park realized that the galaxy had learned something completely different. They had learned that humans could be pushed around, hurt, and even killed without any consequences. General O, Park said, his voice steady and cold. Activate Protocol 7. Our experiment with being peaceful is finished. Admiral Kang Soo-jin walked across the bridge of her ship, looking just like any other day for the past 5 years. To anyone watching from outside, the Soul's Promise looked like a boring cargo ship that carried supplies between different planets. It had plain gray paint, simple design, and moved slowly like ships that were built for carrying heavy loads instead of fighting. But today was different. Today, everything was about to change. Begin transformation sequence, Soo-jin said quietly to her crew. Suddenly, the ship started making mechanical sounds as hidden panels began opening all over the hull. What looked like simple cargo doors were actually covering massive weapon systems. The plain gray outer shell started sliding away to reveal thick armor plating underneath. The small bridge where Soo-jin stood expanded as walls moved, and additional control stations rose from the floor. Within 10 minutes, the Soul's Promise had completely changed from a harmless cargo ship into a warship that was bigger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Lim Tae-ho, who had been pretending to be a simple cargo officer for years, now sat at a complex military control station covered with screens and buttons. Admiral, he said, reading data from his displays, all our hidden ships are reporting ready. We have 73 vessels in 6 different star systems. The Catalans still think we only have a few small patrol boats. Soo-jin smiled grimly as she watched her main screen filled with information. All across human space, the same transformation was happening. What the galaxy thought were research stations studying rocks and plants were actually military command centers. Mining platforms that appeared to be digging for metals were really weapons bases with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Even the simple transport ships that carried passengers between colonies were secretly warships in disguise. For 30 years, humans had been building this hidden fleet while pretending to be weak and peaceful. Every time an alien species demanded something from them, humans would bow politely and give in to their demands. But while they were bowing, they were also taking notes, learning about alien technology, and building better weapons. Open communication channels to every human ship and base, Soo-jin ordered. Also make sure every alien species in the galaxy can hear what I'm about to say. The communication officer, Park Min-young, worked quickly at her station. Within seconds, she had connected to every human military asset across dozens of star systems, and also hacked into the main galactic communication network that all alien species use to talk to each other. All channels open, Admiral, Park reported. Soo-jin stepped forward and began speaking in a clear, strong voice that would be heard across the entire galaxy. This is Admiral Kang Soo-jin of the Human Defense Fleet. For 30 years, We chose to be peaceful. When you took our trade routes, we found new ones. When you forced us from our colonies, we built new homes elsewhere. When you cheated us in negotiations, we accepted unfair deals. We did this because we believed peace was better than war. She paused, looking at the screen showing the destroyed school on Kepler-4 for to be where so many children had died. Today, that changes. To the Catalan Syndicate. You have exactly 72 hours to remove all your ships from Kepler-4 to B, and stop attacking our people. To every other species listening, humanity's patience has limits. Congratulations on finding them. Thousands of light years away, Captain Beek Minjun sat on the bridge of another ship that had just revealed its true nature. The Bison's Edge had been disguised as a small research vessel studying space dust for the past 8 years. In reality, it was a stealth destroyer equipped with weapons that could punch holes through the strongest alien armor. Minjun and his crew had been watching the Catalan fleet surrounding Kepler-4 for 2B for months, carefully studying their positions and tactics. The alien ships were arranged in a loose circle around the planet, spread out to look intimidating rather than to actually defend themselves properly. They had grown lazy and careless because they thought humans were too weak to fight back. All units, this is Bison's Edge. Minjun spoke into his communication system, talking to the other hidden human ships that were now moving into attack positions. The galaxy has been wondering what happens when you push humans too far. I think it's time we showed them the answer. The Catalan fleet commanders were having a normal day, discussing how much longer it would take to completely destroy the human colony, when their sensors suddenly started screaming warnings. Ships were appearing all around them, ships that hadn't been there just seconds before. But these weren't the small, weak human vessels they expected. These were massive warships with weapon systems that made Catalan technology look like children's toys. The first wave of human attacks was perfectly coordinated. Every shot hit exactly where it was supposed to hit. The human ships didn't waste time with threatening messages or demands for surrender. They simply identified their targets and eliminated them with surgical precision. Within 30 minutes, the entire Catalan siege fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single human shot missed its target. Not a single civilian building on the planet below was damaged by stray fire. The few Catalan ships that managed to escape sent panicked messages back to their home worlds. The humans aren't what we thought they were. They're not weak. They never were weak. We made a terrible mistake, but it was too late for warnings. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy was about to learn what 30 years of human restraint had been hiding. Fleet Commander Seo Jun-ho sat in the dark command center of his flagship, watching 12 different star systems on his main display screen. Each dot of light represented a battle happening right now, and he was controlling all of them at the same time, like a person playing 12 chess games at once. Strike Team Alpha is in position at the Rigel system, reported his communications. Officer, Strike Team Beta has successfully infiltrated the Vega shipyards. All units are ready for synchronized attack. Junho nodded calmly. Execute Operation Silent Thunder. All teams attack now. What happened next would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy to accomplish. Across 12 different star systems, human ships appeared out of nowhere and struck their targets at exactly the same moment. Catalan military bases, Zephyrian weapon factories, and alien command centers were destroyed within minutes of each other. Even though they were separated by thousands of light years, the most frightening thing about the human attacks wasn't their power or coordination, it was their complete silence. In every other war the galaxy had ever seen, the attacking species would send messages demanding surrender, make speeches about why they were fighting, or at least threaten their enemies before attacking. Humans did none of these things. They simply appeared, destroyed their targets, and disappeared without saying a single word. Intelligence Officer Han Yuri sat in a small, dark room aboard the stealth ship, Inchin's Whisper. listening to enemy communications through advanced equipment that could intercept alien messages from hundreds of light years away. Her job was to monitor what the Catalans and other hostile species were saying to each other so the human fleet would know what they were planning. What she heard in the enemy communications was pure panic. "This is Admiral Klextar to Catalan High Command," came one terrified voice through her speakers. "We've lost contact with 17 military installations in the past 6 hours. Our scouts report massive explosions, but they can't find any attacking ships. It's like our bases are being destroyed by invisible enemies." Another Catalan commander's voice crackled through the communication system. "High Command, this is Commander Z. Our entire defense fleet at Proxima Base has been eliminated. We had 50 warships positioned there this morning. Now there's nothing but wreckage. Our sensors never detected any human vessels approaching." Uri smiled grimly as she listened. The aliens were starting to understand that they had made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to fix it now. "They're like ghosts," transmitted another panicked Catalan officer. "Our most advanced detection systems can't see them coming. They strike without warning and vanish before we can fight back. How are we supposed to defend against an enemy we can't even see?" The Catalans kept sending desperate messages to each other, begging for instructions on how to fight an opponent that didn't follow any of the normal rules of space warfare. But Human Command never responded to any of their communications. They didn't make threats, didn't offer peace talks, and didn't explain what they wanted. They just kept attacking. On the other side of the galaxy, engineering specialist Moon Woo-jin was conducting a very different kind of warfare. Instead of using weapons to blow things up, he was sitting at a computer terminal, typing commands that would shut down enemy facilities from the inside. Moon had spent 15 years pretending to be a simple maintenance worker at various alien space stations and shipyards. During all that time, he had been secretly studying how their computer systems worked, learning their security codes, and installing hidden programs that would activate when needed. Now, those years of patient preparation were paying off. "Zephyrian, Shipyard 7 is going into emergency shutdown," he reported to his commander. "Their own safety systems are detecting critical failures in the reactor core. They'll have to evacuate the entire facility." The beautiful thing about Moon's approach was that the aliens thought their own equipment was malfunctioning. They had no idea that a human engineer thousands of light years away was controlling their systems, making their automated defenses turn against them. "Shipyard 12 is also offline," Moon continued, working at 3 different computer terminals simultaneously. "I've convinced their manufacturing robots that there's a contamination leak. They're systematically destroying their own half-built warships to prevent the spread of dangerous materials." Across the galaxy, similar scenarios were playing out. Alien military commanders would wake up to find that their weapons factories had shut themselves down, their communication networks had stopped working, or their defense systems had somehow turned against them. The most frustrating part for the aliens was that they couldn't figure out how to stop it. Every time they thought they had fixed their computer problems, something else would break. Their own technology was being turned into a weapon against them, and they had no idea how the humans were doing it. Within 3 months, the galaxy's former bullies found themselves completely helpless against an enemy they had never taken seriously. The species that had spent decades picking on peaceful humans were now discovering what happened when that peaceful species decided they had been patient long enough. The humans fought like a force of nature, unstoppable, unpredictable, and completely without mercy for anyone who had threatened their children and families. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans would do when pushed too far. Now they knew. 6 months had passed since the day human children died in the bombed school on Kepler 442b. Now, Ambassador Lee Minho walked into the same Galactic Council chambers where he had spent 30 years being ignored and dismissed. The room looked exactly the same circular arrangement of seats, the same fancy decorations on the walls, the same alien representatives from dozens of different species. But everything had changed. As Minho entered the chamber, conversations stopped. Alien delegates, who used to barely glance at him now, watched his every movement with careful attention. The Zephyrian representative, whose scales used to show bored gray colors when humans spoke, now displayed the bright yellow patterns that meant fear and respect. Minho took his usual seat in the back corner, the same spot where humans had been, placed for 3 decades as a sign that they weren't important. But now, even from the back of the room, when he cleared his throat to speak, the entire chamber fell silent. The Human Colonial Authority requests permission to establish a new research station in the Beta Centauri system, Minho said in the same calm, polite voice he had always used. The station will study stellar formation and will not interfere with any existing territorial claims. In the old days, such a request would have led to hours of debate. Alien species would argue about whether humans deserved access to that region of space. They would demand concessions, impose restrictions, or simply deny the request without explanation. This time, the vote was unanimous approval in less than 30 seconds. No debate, no conditions. No one even asked for more details about what kind of research the humans planned to do. The Catalan representative, one of the few survivors from the species that had bombed human civilians, actually stood up and bowed respectfully toward Minho before casting her vote. 6 months ago, Catalans had laughed at human requests. Now they treated every human diplomat like a dangerous predator that must be handled with extreme care. Back on Earth, Director Park Ji-woo sat in his office, reading the daily reports from human colonies across the galaxy. The difference between these reports and the ones from a year ago was like reading about 2 completely different universes. Sir, his assistant Kim Sora entered with her usual stack of daily briefings. The colony administrators are reporting something interesting. All the protection fees that alien species use to demand from our ships have been cancelled. The trade restrictions that were choking our outer settlements have been lifted. Several species have actually offered us better trade deals than we had before the war. Park nodded, but his expression remained serious. On the wall behind his desk hung a long list of names, 12,000 human civilians who had died on Kepler 442b because the galaxy thought humans were too weak to defend themselves. These people had died because alien species believed they could hurt humans without consequences. What about military threats? Park asked. None, sir. 0 aggressive actions against any human territory in the past 4 months. The Zephyrian Empire has actually withdrawn from 3 star systems that they used to claim, even though we never asked them to leave. It seems they're worried we might consider their presence there to be threatening. Kim paused and looked at her data pad with an expression of amazement. Sir, it's completely quiet out there. For the first time in 30 years, our people can live and work in space without constantly worrying about being attacked or cheated. High above Earth, Admiral Kang Soo-jin stood on the bridge of the Soul's Promise, watching her fleet return to their hidden positions throughout human space. The massive warship that had revealed itself during the war was once again disguised as a simple cargo vessel. Its weapons were powered down and concealed behind fake hull panels. Its advanced military systems were hidden behind the appearance of basic transportation equipment. All units, resume peaceful operations, she commanded through the fleet communication system. Return to your cover identities. Resume watchful waiting protocols. Across human space, dozens of warships that had terrified the galaxy's most powerful military forces were transforming back into harmless-looking research vessels, mining platforms, and cargo ships. The galaxy's most advanced stealth technology made the human fleet invisible once again, but everyone knew they were still there. Soo-Jin looked at a picture on her command console, showing the rebuilt school on Kepler 442b. Human engineers had worked around the clock to construct a new, better school to replace the one that had been bombed. Children were playing in the courtyard again. their laughter a reminder of why the war had been fought. The galaxy had spent 30 years pushing humans around because they thought human restraint meant human weakness. They had demanded tribute, stolen territory, and finally murdered children because they believed humans were too cowardly to fight back. Now they understood the truth. Human restraint had never been about fear or weakness. It had been a choice, a conscious decision to seek peace, even when peace came at a high price. But choices could be changed. The galaxy was peaceful again, but this time the peace wasn't based on human submission. It was based on galactic respect for a species that had proved they possessed both infinite patience and absolutely devastating military power. The aliens had learned to fear the sound of silence because they now knew what human silence really meant. It didn't mean humans were weak. It meant humans were thinking. And when humans finished thinking, entire civilizations could disappear overnight. The sleeping giant had returned to sleep, but everyone remembered what happened when you woke. It